I wouldn't miss it for the world. It's perfectly organized, really well done.
And you just know when you're here that it's a good place to be.
Here we go. Dr. Patrick, how are you doing? Happy to see you as well. So I heard that you're pregnant as we speak. So how many months are we doing?
I am pregnant. I'm 5 months pregnant with my first child. So my husband and I are extremely excited and happy and thrilled and, anxious and all those things, all those, emotions that you can imagine first time parents feel. So
I see. We are all very glad that you joined us for this Q&A webinar on nutrition, health, and everything that goes into it. I'm pretty sure we're going to touch also nutrition and pregnancy in this call. But let's start from nutrition and so on. So what would you say are the kind of key cornerstones when it comes to nutrition that people often forget?
the people often forget, I think, is the key. I personally think some of the key cornerstones to nutrition are making sure you're getting adequate micronutrients. And I don't think anyone that's heard me speak before is surprised by me answering this way. But micronutrients are about 30 to 40 essential vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and fatty acids that we have to get from our diet because we don't make them in our body. And they're doing, extremely important functions in a variety of different tissues in our body that are running our metabolism, running the way neurotransmitters are being released, basically just running all the physiological functions in our body. In fact, around 22% of all enzymes, which are specialized proteins in the body that are doing a certain function that's usually involved in metabolism, actually require a cofactor, which happens to be either a vitamin or a mineral, to actually function properly. So getting those micronutrients from your food is extremely important. And I think a lot of people focus a lot on macronutrients. They're very concerned about, the carbohydrate content, the protein content, the fat content, and often sort of ignore the importance of all the micronutrients that are present in our foods. So that's probably one of the most important, in my opinion, parts of nutrition.
I see. Which ones are the micronutrients that people are most deficient in?
Well, there's been, most of the research that I cite has been done in the United States. So it's possible that deficiencies vary according to region, countries. Certain people have different diets. But, generally speaking, at least, to the United States, micronutrients that are most prevalent in deficiency are magnesium. About half the country is deficient in magnesium. Magnesium is extremely important. It's involved in over 300 different biochemical reactions in the body. The first and foremost being you can't make energy in the form of ATP or use ATP without magnesium. So magnesium is pretty darn important in that respect. However, you also need magnesium to repair damage to your DNA, which is constantly being done. I'm damaging my DNA right now. You're damaging your DNA. Everyone listening is damaging their DNA because normal metabolism creates, metabolic byproducts that damage your DNA. The beauty is that we have this elegant system where we can repair that damage. And if we didn't have that system, we'd all come down with cancer at like the age of 6 years old. So it's obviously a very elegant and important system to, that we have evolved as humans. However, those repair enzymes require magnesium to function properly. And as we age and get older and older, like everything, DNA repair enzymes don't work as efficiently. So it becomes even more important that you sort of give the repair machinery everything that it can have to repair that damage. So magnesium is a big one. Vitamin K1 is another one, which is, by the way, magnesium is found at the center of a chlorophyll molecule, which is what give plants their green color. So plants that are, dark green leafy vegetables, for example, they have the most, they're the highest content in magnesium, which means people aren't eating enough greens. Same with vitamin K1. Vitamin K1 is also found in dark leafy greens. About, again, half the country is not getting enough vitamin K1. Again, indicative that people just aren't eating their greens. Calcium's another one people aren't getting enough of. And, of course, vitamin D, which is actually a hormone and we make from the sun, is another one about 70% of the United States has inadequate levels of vitamin D. Now, the vitamin D, you can find modest amounts in some foods like fatty fish, but by and large, it's hard to find. I mean, some foods are fortified with it, but the foods that are fortified with it aren't necessarily the healthiest foods either. So,
yeah, if I can jump in for a second. So when it comes to vitamin D, one way how you can increase the amount of vitamin D in food like mushrooms is to hydrate them in sunlight. So it seems that they're also absorbing vitamin D as we are, although it's the vitamin D2 form, which kind of, out of my curiosity, I would love to hear, is it the same to get the vitamin D2 as D3?
It's a great question, Teemu. It's something that I've been interested in as well, and I've done some reading on it. So vitamin D2 does not get converted into the precursor for the steroid hormone, 25-hydroxyvitamin D, as well as vitamin D3 does, but it does. I mean, it's not like it doesn't get converted. So it does eventually form the steroid hormone, vitamin D steroid hormone. The thing that really piqued my interest was a couple of studies that have come out over the last, I'd say, 4 years. And it appears as though it's possible vitamin D2 may somehow interfere with vitamin D3 metabolism, specifically in muscle tissue, where it's been shown to somehow, and the mechanism is still unclear to scientists that are doing this research, somehow may interfere with converting vitamin D3 into 25-hydroxyvitamin D3 and then into 125-hydroxyvitamin D3, which is the active hormone. So I used to be really gung-ho about getting D2 from mushrooms, and I thought that was really cool. And I'm not sure that it's not. It's kind of an open question, but I don't feel confident to say either way. Oh, you should watch what your D2 take is, or you should get more D2. I think I'm sort of on the fence, and I'm waiting for more research, and mostly I'm waiting for us to understand mechanisms and be able to kind of demonstrate this in a causal sort of way where we're giving, for example, animals or rodents vitamin D2 and then see how it is metabolized in different tissues and things like that. So it's kind of a complicated answer. Sorry.
Yeah, when it comes to kind of trendy diets, like let's say when people think of health and healthy eating, they sometimes go from the kind of other end of the spectrum, which is basically like very much processed foods and very meat heavy and maybe carbohydrate heavy plants like root vegetables like potatoes and so on, to then the kind of whole vegan thing, like very much a plant-based diet. And so what can you say from that? What's your take on kind of going vegan? Or should we find something in the middle?
Well, I personally found something in the middle, but I think that there are a lot of benefits to a vegan diet in that if someone's actually eating mostly whole foods. I mean, there are people that are vegetarians and vegans that sort of, lean towards eating a bunch of processed foods, which still wouldn't be good. But let's just say for, the topic of this conversation, the vegans are eating whole foods. I think that there are massive benefits to that sort of diet. There are trade-offs as well, but someone who's eating a more vegan type of diet is going to be eating a much larger density of vegetables and also fruits. And in that in of itself, in addition to the micronutrients, I mean, you're getting folate, which is also in the greens. You're getting magnesium. You're getting vitamin K1. You're getting calcium, vitamin C. all these micronutrients you're also getting fermentable fibers. And fermentable fiber, as most people that are sort of savvy with the nutrition field are we know that fermentable fiber is also playing a very important role in health via the microbiome in the gut. And so, they're getting a really abundant source of this fermentable fiber, and also non-fermentable fiber, which also plays an important role of just moving stuff through the intestines. So I think that those two factors are really important. Now, there are some micronutrient deficiencies, or there are some micronutrients that vegans have to really focus more on because they're not found in plants. For example, the omega-3 fatty acids are one really good example. That's something that's, especially the marine omega-3 fatty acids, which are found in fish, DHA and EPA. They play very important roles in the body. DHA is extremely important for brain function, something like 30% of all the lipids in the brain are, composed of DHA, and they're playing extremely important roles in the way neurons, the structure and shape of neurons, and how neurotransmitters are able to be received by the neuron, because all the receptors are on the neuron, and those receptors depend on how much DHA is in the cell membrane. So all these little intricacies, things like that. Alpha-linoleic acid, which is the plant form of omega-3, which is found in, for example, walnuts or chia seeds, flax seeds, things like that, can be converted into EPA and subsequently into DHA, but this conversion efficiency varies. It's highly variable, actually, from person to person. There is a huge genetic component, so there are very common variations in the gene that encodes for the enzyme that converts ALA, the plant omega-3, into the marine omega-3 EPA, such that some people do not do it well, some people do it very well, depending on what your certain DNA makeup is. You may be doing it good, or maybe not doing it very well. So that's something to consider. And there's also, it's just the efficiency in of itself is not very good. So I personally think that people that are vegans need to think about supplementing things like microalgae oil, which is actually a good source of DHA, or also vitamin D3, another one, because the sun is obviously the best source of vitamin D3. UVB radiation from the sun has to hit your skin. It converts something in your skin called dehydrocholesterol into vitamin D3. That's released into the bloodstream, blah, blah, blah. You eventually get the steroid hormone. However, you have to live in a region where UVB radiation is going to hit your skin. And you also have to have a skin color that's not super dark, because it acts as a natural sunscreen, which blocks out UVB. And so people nowadays have migrated all over the world. I mean, you have people from sub-Saharan Africa and Somalia now living in Minnesota, or in Sweden, where more than half of the year UVB radiation is not actually even hitting the atmosphere. And so people really do need to consider that and get their vitamin D levels measured and probably supplement. So that's something, right. And then there's other ones like iron, for example. Iron's obviously very abundant in red meat. Heme is the source of iron, and so heme is what gives meat its red color. You can find iron in some plants, legumes, for example, or spinach. However, it's bound to phytate, which makes it pretty much almost 3 times less bioavailable. So it's recommended that vegetarians and vegans increase their RDA for iron by like almost 2-fold. Things like that, where you have to there are things you need to consider when you're having a vegan or vegetarian diet that you need to really be a little fastidious about and careful, measure things.
Yeah.
So
just to jump in, I mean, that probably answers Sini Kaven's question on the vegan diet. And it's not an easy answer. It's a very complex system when it comes to human beings. You definitely should kind of measure your existing status and see where the supplementation really makes sense. So to put this into more practical terms, Leena Matikka is asking if you would limit yourself to one if you would limit yourself to only 3 things to take care of your nutrition, what would they be and why?
3 things as in food intake or supplements or both?
Let's start from kind of whole foods, and we can then address the supplementation. There's actually another question on kind of what would be the kind of most typical, most beneficial supplements to take, but let's...
Oh, okay. So for food, personally, if there was just 3 things that I could limit, my nutrition to, first would be green plants in general. The second would be getting omega-3 fatty acids. So I'd be focused on healthy fish, like wild salmon, which has a low mercury content, very low mercury content. And the third thing would be, I guess it's a trade-off between healthy fats, protein. You're making sure I'm getting. I mean, with the omega-3, I'm getting protein, so it's kind of like a trade-off between those two. Making sure I'm getting avocados, and of course, I think omega-3s are healthy fats, nuts, these things.
I see. Arno Paula is asking, how does your average daily meal and eating plan look like?
Yeah, so well, right now it's changed a little, but generally speaking, my daily meal plan is for breakfast. I like to have eggs and some sautéed kale or boiled kale, where I put a little bit of mustard powder on top. The eggs are a really good source of choline, and choline is very important for making methyl groups in the body. And methyl groups are used for epigenetics, which is a way of changing how much your genes are activated or deactivated based on various environmental stressors like exercise or heat stress or stress in general. So methyl groups play an important role in that, and choline is a very good source of that. Choline also gets converted into phosphatidylcholine, which is very important for cell membranes. So I really like to take in my choline, my eggs. And the kale, of course, is my green that I like to have greens with every meal. I'm obsessed about trying to have greens with every meal.
Right.
So, and I put mustard powder on top for an enzyme called myrosinase, which is heat sensitive and is important for a compound called sulforaphane that I'm extremely interested in having. So
we actually have a few questions on the sulforaphane.
Okay, so I'll move on to my lunch then. Maybe you want my lunch and dinner.
Yeah. Just a quick question. There was also a question on phosphatidylserine, or choline. Does it make sense to supplement these things directly, or should you take them in whole food sources?
Do you want me to go on that tangent, Temu? Yeah, let's see if I'll try to keep it really brief.
Yes.
So, if you're looking for something like a nootropic, there have been studies showing that choline itself is, can potentially be a nootropic in that it can increase acetylcholine levels in the brain. It can also improve processing speed. Processing time, decreases, so that basically you're able to say things quicker and you're just a little sharper. Phosphatidylcholine is actually much more bioavailable than just taking choline with some sort of chelator, that it's bound to. So, I personally think that the studies showing, choline being some sort of nootropic they're mixed, and often it depends on someone's baseline level of cognitive function. So people that perform poorly at baseline and they take a phosphatidylcholine supplement in whatever your favorite form is, actually can improve after taking the supplement. Whereas people that do not perform poorly at baseline, really there's no effect. In some cases, there is even possibly a slightly negative effect. So
right. When it comes to kind of supplementation, some people are interested in getting kind of immediate benefit for their performance. It could be for building more muscle or just like being high performance. Some people are more interested in longevity. I see sometimes that these things are not necessarily going hand in hand. If you optimize your biochemistry with adequate nutrition and exercise, definitely it's going to show up also as improvements in cognitive function and so on. But sometimes like putting a little bit too much gas on the pedal is not necessarily giving you long-term benefits. Kind of,
Right.
I mean, you're the huge expert on longevity and cancer and so on. Like things that promote growth sometimes promote cancer as well. Is that right?
It's absolutely true. And there's often a trade-off, not always, but often. And just to kind of bring it back to the phosphatidylcholine, and I personally, there are people that actually do need to supplement because they have those variations in certain genes that don't make phosphatidylcholine very well. And so those people actually may benefit from supplementing. But I really like to get it from my foods. And the food that I choose to really get it from is actually salmon roe, because it's very high in omega-3 fatty acids and phosphatidylcholine. So I like to get my salmon roe, which kind of brings me to some of the foods I snack on throughout the day, which is an avocado with some salmon roe and lemon to get all my healthy fats. And avocados are high in potassium and also vitamin E, various forms of vitamin E. So that's something that I snack on. Lunch often will be an avocado and some roe and a smoothie where I mix in some chard and some kale and an apple, an avocado again, and some collagen powder. And then dinner will be like a piece of meat, like either salmon, or it'll be farm-raised chicken, or it'll be a grass-fed piece of filet, along with some sort of greens, either a salad or some sort of steamed vegetable, some sort of greens with it. And so that's sort of pretty much my diet.
Yeah. So what's the deal with the broccoli sprouts? I mean, you have an amazing video. Everyone should check it out on broccoli sprouts and sulforaphane. I actually, thank you for your visit to Finland recently at the Biohacker Summit. That was excellent. If you want to, by the way, check out Dr. Rhonda Patrick's presentation at the Biohacker Summit 2016, plus also a lot of great presentation on nootropics and how to increase your physical and mental performance. There's great presentations from Ben Greenfield and other people alike. There's a link on the page for the previous conference package. It's great video content with multiple camera sources. But anyway, so at the dinner after that event, you were telling me your protocol for making broccoli sprouts, and I started doing it. And I found it as a cheap source of food, and also, it kind of really elevates me. So what's the thing about it?
So sulforaphane is something that is produced by cruciferous plants. So plants in the cruciferous family, like broccoli, kale, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, etc. And it's produced when the plant tissue is crushed or torn or chewed. And when that happens, it makes this compound called sulforaphane. And sulforaphane is used to sort of ward off insects because it affects their nervous system. It's slightly toxic to them. It doesn't kill them, but it sort of just makes them like, I don't want this, so they go away. Well, this happens to have a very hormetic effect in humans because it is, something that is slightly stressful on our cells, and as a response to that, that physiological stress, our cells activate a wide variety of stress response pathways, mostly in this case regulated through something called the NRF2 pathway, which regulates over 200 different genes. It's turning on genes involved in antioxidant activity. It's turning on anti-inflammatory genes, turning off pro-inflammatory genes. It's turning on genes involved in producing acetylcholine, producing other neurotransmitters. It's turning on genes involved in neurogenesis. So it's doing all this stuff. And there's a lot of literature out there, clinical studies showing that it has a very positive effect on lowering inflammation in humans that take in sulforaphane. It has a positive effect on excreting toxic compounds that we're exposed to from environmental factors such as air pollution. So benzene gets excreted, and it's been shown to improve brain function in autistic individuals and cognitive function in autistic individuals. And there's lots and lots of animal studies showing it's, protects from traumatic brain injury. It increases acetylcholine in the brain. It helps with depression. There's just so much, evidence out there that it has a very overall positive effect on health. And broccoli sprouts are actually the younger the plant, the more sulforaphane it has. So you can imagine biology kind of wants you to, when you're young, it's especially wants you to be able to ward off anything that may possibly be a threat to your survival because you haven't passed on your genes yet. So the younger plants have the more have higher content of sulforaphane, which is why broccoli sprouts are fantastic.
Yeah. And
I'm
often,
obsessed with them.
often in these new growths, you have also high amounts of vitamin C, for example, like sprouts from pine trees and spruce sprouts and so on. Those are excellent source of vitamin C as well. Now, broccoli sprouts, a little bit more about that. You mentioned that it's kind of toxic to some microorganisms, and many plants in the world, they have these mechanisms which seem to be toxic to fungus or bacteria or microorganisms, but in humans they produce this, as you mentioned, hormetic stress effect. We could add, for example, curcumin as one of those, or chocolate, or even coffee. So what else comes to your mind as kind of these powerful plants that are kind of really good in our garden to keep away some of the nasties, but at the same, and can protect themselves, but at the same time they have a very beneficial effect on humans?
I think that another one would be blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, all the berries. They have something in them called anthocyanins, which are also something that have a hormetic stress response, effect, and are very beneficial. All sorts of flavonoids and polyphenols, which are found in plants and fruits. EGCG found in green tea is another one. This is also another reason why I really think eating a wide spectrum of vegetables and fruits are also important, because we don't even know what compounds. I mean, these are just some of the compounds we've discovered.
Right.
There's so many compounds
and
that we don't know.
Then there's the whole microbiome. I mean, it seems that different foods feed different bacteria in the gut, right?
Absolutely. It's absolutely true. There's different types of fermentable fiber in different, fruit skins, in different, seeds, and different plants and vegetables. And so to me, it's like the reason why I sort of eat like a vegetarian, but I have meat, but I add meat in. So the reason for that is because it's sort of like this three-way, trifecta, where you're getting the micronutrients from the plants, you're getting the fermentable fiber, and then you're getting these what are called Xeno-hormetic compounds, and the plant hormetic compounds, and they're called Xeno-hormetic because xenobiotics refer to something that is not made in the body or found in the body at all, such as like vitamins and minerals are obviously found in the body. But sulforaphane is not. So sulforaphane, but it has a beneficial effect. So it has its beneficial effect through hormesis. And so it's a xeno-hormetic compound.
Right.
So, so you have there's so much there,
And there is all these studies also when it comes to the supplementation. And sometimes people think that, let's say, taking some of these compounds or more antioxidants is good for us, and there has been some conflicting studies that show that maybe sometimes over supplementation of, let's say, vitamin E or vitamin A can actually cause growth of cancers, for example, and kind of inhibit the apoptosis process that happens normally naturally. So what is your take on that? And by the way, there is Marina Shuthova who is asking that kind of in similar lines, that there's common assumption that vitamins are good, and she would like to know if you're taking any vitamins and supplements, and why.
Okay, yeah. So it's absolutely true that you have to be very careful with what you supplement with, particularly when it comes to antioxidants like vitamin E, and also N-acetylcysteine, for example. Some of these supplements, because getting it from your food is one. When you're getting, these antioxidants from your food, it's one thing, but you have to realize, we have all these genes in our cells that are very powerful antioxidant genes, much orders of magnitude more powerful than a supplemental antioxidant is, and those genes are activated when there's slight stress, and that slight stress can be coming from what's called, for example, a little bit of reactive oxygen species that's produced. And so if you don't make that at all, then you may be sort of selling yourself short, because now your own endogenous antioxidant pathways or anti-inflammatory pathways are not being activated because they're being sequestered. The signaling molecules that activate them are being sequestered by, for example, vitamin E. Also, when it comes to cancer, supplemental antioxidants are really, it's been shown in the literature, really can be harmful because cancer cells also are very sensitive to reactive oxygen species. Their cancer cells are primed to die. I mean, they're just holding on, as long as they can to not, be killed. We have a lot of genetic mechanisms that can recognize when a cell's damaged and say, we got to get rid of this cell. But the cancer cells sort of find counter pathways and say they deactivate some of those pathways, and so they sort of can circumvent that. Well, reactive oxygen species is one way that can just sort of tip them over the balance, to the death side. So supplemental antioxidants prevent that from happening. And it's been shown, at least in a couple of animal studies now, multiple different types of cancer, supplemental vitamin E can allow tumor cells to grow faster. Right. Now, that doesn't mean that all vitamin supplements are bad, because like we talked about in the beginning of this seminar, a lot of people are deficient in many micronutrients. And so, and it's also kind of hard to really eat a well-balanced diet and make sure you're getting enough of these micronutrients. So, there is sort of a middle ground where it is, I think, in my opinion, evidence shows it's beneficial to take, certain supplements. And for me personally, I sort of, I like to take a multivitamin, which doesn't have really high concentrations of everything, but it has a lot of the B vitamins. B vitamins are all these different B vitamins are extremely important for mitochondrial function. Yes. They're important for metabolism. It has trace elements in it. It has selenium. It has iodine, which I try to get from my diet, but it's nice to have just a little bit of insurance to make sure I'm still getting, enough of it. So I like to take a multivitamin, and then I take vitamin D because even though I live in Southern California, which is, probably one of the sunniest places in the United States, I also am not outside in the sun a lot.
There is Arto Vainio is asking, what is the optimal level of vitamin D?
The optimal level of vitamin D, in my opinion, I have sort of done a lot of research on vitamin D. I've published on it as well. And from my opinion, the optimal levels of vitamin D based on all-cause mortality studies. So there's about 33 different studies that were published between 1960 to 2013 that looked and measured people's vitamin D levels and then correlated that with, when they died and what they died of and how old they were when they died. And people that had vitamin D levels between 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter. So to convert that into nanomoles per liter, you would have to multiply that by 2.5. I think probably in many European countries, the units are different. So 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter was associated with the lowest all-cause mortality in those 33 different studies. To me, that was pretty compelling evidence. And then in addition to that, there's also been evidence that have looked at, for example, telomere length in people's leukocytes, their white blood cells, and again found the same levels, 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter, was associated with the longest telomere length. And telomeres are a biomarker for aging. The shorter they get, the shorter telomeres get, the more it's considered to be a pro-aging phenomenon. Telomeres are very important for protecting. They're at the ends of your chromosomes, and they're protecting all your DNA inside of your chromosomes from damage, from all sorts of bad things. And as they become really short, they can't do that anymore. And
let me interrupt for a second. So Sini Kaven is asking how to avoid the shortening of telomeres, and Kim Ribaka is asking about your thoughts on the different products that are now marketed for supporting or repairing the telomeres or otherwise slowing down aging. So what's your take on these two questions?
Okay, so just very briefly, we know that things that accelerate telomere shortening are stress. Stress has been shown in multiple studies to accelerate the shortening of telomere. Refined sugar has been shown to shorten telomeres because through inflammation. Inflammation itself has been shown to shorten telomeres. Actually, vitamin D has been shown to stave off telomere shortening, as well as omega-3. There's 2 studies that have been done out of the lab of Elizabeth Blackburn, who actually got the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine 2009 for discovering the enzyme telomerase that can rebuild telomeres. So anything that's causing inflammation, that's causing stress, and also some of these micronutrient deficiencies can accelerate the shortening of telomeres. Things that can prevent telomeres from shortening too fast are making sure you're getting, for example, enough micronutrients. Vitamin D and omega-3 have been shown. Meditation's been shown. Exercise also has been shown to slow telomere shortening. So I think, and sleep as well. So pretty much everything that you're told is good for your health. At the level of telomeres is good for you. Supplements out there, I know one is TA65. That's the big one that does have some evidence that it can lengthen telomeres by activating an enzyme called telomerase, which we have in all of our cells. However, the gene is normally silenced in most cells, which means the gene is there, but it's not activated. And so the cells that it is activated in are leukocytes and stem cells, and also our germ cells. So, cells in the sperm and egg.
Yeah. Isn't it also activated in cancer to some degree?
Yes. So that's what I was going to get to. The reason why it is not active in most of our tissues is because cancer cells, they sort of have found a way to become immortal. They find as many different ways to become immortal as they can. And one of the ways they become immortal is they reactivate telomerase in a cell that doesn't usually have it turned on. And so you'll have a cell that has telomeres that are really getting short. And when telomeres start to get really short, it means a person's older. That's one. 2, it means a person has acquired a lot of DNA damage. So DNA damage, the first thing inside of the cell that takes the hit are telomeres, because telomeres are protecting your DNA because they don't want your DNA to get mutations. So the telomeres take the hit. And so basically it's a damaged cell. Well, a damaged cell, once the telomeres get really short, the cell recognizes, wait, this is bad, this cell's damaged, and it kills itself through a mechanism called apoptosis. It activates all these genetic pathways. However, when telomerase is reactivated, it doesn't allow that mechanism to come into play. What ends up happening is the damaged cell starts to rebuild its telomeres. But the problem is that the cell has already been so damaged that it shouldn't be around. It should die. So part of the problem, and sort of my concern with something like TA65 is you don't know what cells you're reactivating telomerase in. So it's something, it may not be a problem. I mean, there are people taking it, but cancer also takes several decades to form. And so we may not know anything until 30 or 40 years from now. So I'm a little cautious when it comes to some of those supplements out there that claim to rebuild telomere.
Yeah. Another thing that people promote to kind of as a tool for longevity is fasting, and especially recently ketogenic diets and intermittent fasting. What's your take on these and your thoughts?
I think fasting is a extremely important tool that has, that humans have evolved with throughout, our history, because we oftentimes throughout our history didn't always have access to food. And so, during those times when food was more scarce, we would go through a fasting phase. And fasting has a lot of very profound effects on metabolism and on aging itself. So, fasting has been shown to actually cause cells that are damaged to eat themselves in a process called autophagy. And the reason that happens is because you're fasting, and so the cell is trying to get energy from somewhere in order to, feed the rest of the tissues, the rest of the cells in the tissue. And so what happens is it goes through, and all these cells that have more damage, they get recycled. And so their organelles and all their parts inside of it get used as energy. And the benefit of that is that you're getting rid of a cell that was already accumulating more damaged. And then also what ends up happening is the body senses that that you've gotten rid of cells. And so you actually, that activates stem cells to come out of their what's called quiescence. They're usually just kind of hanging around waiting for some action. They come out and they divide and they make brand new cells. And so it's kind of a way of just replenishing a cellular population with healthy young new cells. So that's a really cool, and that's been shown, a lot of that work's been shown by Dr. Walter Longo. He's shown both in animal studies, and also he's done a lot of different clinical studies, some of them more pilot than others, but has shown that happens. This autophagy happens, also apoptosis, so the cells that are damaged die. And this activates stem cells to make new cells in whatever tissue we're talking about, whether that's the liver or it's in your immune system or it's in your kidneys or in your brain. He's shown in all of those tissues this happens. So I think that's a really cool, a benefit of autophagy. Of course, also it helps normalize metabolism, glucose regulation, these sorts of things also become more normalized. Hormones that you're making, things that are involved in satiety, like leptin, or things that are involved in hunger, like ghrelin. These things also can be normalized through a fasting, through a variety of different mechanisms. But so there's lots of benefits.
Yeah, there's. I've been thinking about one aspect that Bruno Franca is also asking is kind of like how to practice intermittent fasting if you have like these blood sugar dysregulation problems. So what if you have already diabetes? What if production of ketones is not good for you?
So it really depends. There actually are studies showing that doing a short intermittent fast under medical supervision can actually help improve insulin sensitivity. So, this is not something, it's something that needs to be supervised. Obviously, if you're someone that has, type 2 diabetes, and your pancreas isn't working very well, then the production of ketones may, too much ketones may lead to ketoacidosis, which is not a problem for most people, but is something that should be considered. But there are studies that have shown people that fasting does improve insulin sensitivity. Personally, I think one of the modalities of fasting, which is a little bit different than doing like a 48-hour intermittent fast, which definitely needs to be medically supervised, is time-restricted eating, where you're basically eating all your food within a certain time window, between 10 to 12 hours. 10 hours is actually best, not even 9 hours, 9 or 10 hours. And then the rest of the evening you fast. So you're fasting for 14 or 16 hours. That is a little safer and also has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and regulate blood glucose levels as well. And that's something that I personally try to practice. I think from an evolutionary perspective, we're diurnal creatures, humans are, which means that we're active during the day. Our metabolism's active during the day, and during the night is when we rest and we sleep. And there's been studies that have looked, for example, at giving people, just healthy young men, the same macronutrient content meals throughout the day and measured insulin sensitivity, measured blood glucose levels. And the same meal will cause a much higher blood glucose response, and insulin sensitivity goes down when it's given in the evening versus the morning, for example, even though macronutrient content is exactly the same, calories are exactly the same.
Right.
And that's because our metabolism is on a circadian rhythm, meaning all these enzymes involved in metabolism, involved in regulating insulin response, all that stuff is active, in the day. And then as the day progresses, they become less active.
I see.
So
I'm going to switch gears a little bit, looking at the time here in 5 minutes. Sauna and cold thermogenesis. So I have a few questions here. One of them is from Walter Meuse. He's asking, how does the research on sauna differ compared between dry saunas, steam saunas, and let's say infrared heating rooms? Sauna is definitely one of the things that is kind of picking up speed internationally. Tim Ferriss wrote you wrote a great article on Tim Ferriss' blog on the health benefits of sauna. So is there a difference between using an infrared sauna or any other types of sauna?
Well, the literature, mostly the literature looks at dry sauna, or I guess what would be more a typical Finnish sauna, where you're you're putting water on some heat and then creating steam, which is a little different than just a steam shower, for example. And so those are the main studies that have really shown benefits in terms of muscle mass, in terms of longevity, lowering all-cause mortality, decreasing Alzheimer's risk. The infrared sauna literature mostly focuses on sweating out, sweating out different, possibly heavy metals and or other, potential compounds that we shouldn't have in our system, like, bisphenol A. But the fundamental core of heat stress and the benefits from heat stress has to do with heat. So getting yourself hot is the fundamental core of it, and this activates a variety of hormetic stress pathways. Probably the best example of that would be heat shock proteins, which get activated when your core body temperature elevates a little bit, and heat shock proteins play an important role in aging and preventing proteins from aggregating inside your cells, which can lead to neurodegenerative disease. It can lead to cardiovascular diseases, and so there's all sorts of benefits that can be had from the heat itself. Right. Steam shower, I have seen one study comparing a steam shower and hot bath, and depending on the amount of time that you're in it, you can get a similar effect. Personally, I think infrared saunas are much more difficult because they don't get as hot, so you have to stay in them for a much longer duration than you would another sauna to get some of the heat shock protein sort of benefits.
Yeah. There is one guy called Vladimir Heiskanen. He has made a spreadsheet of 2,000 different research articles on the health benefits of infrared light and its use in, there's different nanometers that we're talking about, and infrared sauna is kind of fitting into some categories. There is also topical application of certain different wavelengths for the anti-inflammatory or cell growth kind of features. So that's another thing people might want to check out. Janne Kupari asks also, does hot shower give you similar benefits as to genetics and biomarkers than using a sauna?
Well, I think hot shower would be a little more difficult because you're not completely submerged in the water like in a hot bath. So hot bath would, but I'm not sure hot shower would, because the water's sort of just hitting you, and you only get so hot. Like a good sort of non-scientific gauge of heat stress would be your heart rate elevating, because that's what happens when when heat stress is occurring. Your heart rate elevates.
So there is a question about what is the temperature and length for sauna that would be best for health. So what you are saying is, once you see your heart rate elevating, you're getting some good benefits.
Well, that's the non-scientific way of doing it, but there are studies that have shown, for example, depending on what you're looking for. So I would say, I don't have all the studies in front of me, but generally speaking, about 179 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 30 minutes seems to be sort of standard for activating heat shock proteins, for lowering all-cause mortality, for lowering cardiovascular mortality, and for decreasing Alzheimer's risk. Something around there.
Gotcha.
is what's pretty common.
Now, considering the immune system benefits, Aki Hirvonen is asking, is it healthy to take sauna while you have flu or cold?
Personally, I don't do that because when you are sick, when you have the flu or a cold, your immune system is in hyperactive mode, which means energy is being sucked away from other processes in your body, and it's being your immune system needs more energy to fight off whatever, virus or bacteria it is that you're being exposed to. So it's a very energy consuming process. Stress, heat stress, is a form of stress, like exercise also stresses the body, also is a very energy consuming process. And so stress on top of the stress may actually not be hormetic. It may actually be detrimental. So just like I don't go and run 3 miles when I have a cold either, I wait until I'm, sort of recovered from that, and then I do it. So that's my take on it.
I see. Now, to kind of starting to wrap up a little bit, Ilias Grammatikakis is asking, I think he's from Greece, what are the best 3 strategies to implement for optimal health? So everything Like, what would you take as kind of good approach, good strategies for health?
Personally, I think the three strategies for me would be obviously avoiding refined, processed foods, refined sugars, refined carbohydrates, those things, cakes, cookies, soda, candy, all that, avoiding that and eating micronutrient dense foods. So eating a lot of greens, I think eating something that has omega-3 fatty acid in it. If you don't eat fish, then supplementing with a high quality source of fish oil. I think eating within a time restricted window. So eating within a no longer than 12-hour time period. A lot of people actually think they are, but they don't, eat within that window. I think that's also extremely important for health, and it's an easy thing to implement. And then I think also, the exercise is extremely important. So I think those are the easiest sort of three things.
Yeah. So the three pillars, one of them, and the chair doesn't really hold. So definitely take a look at those things. So if you are interested in more ideas and kind of insights, especially when it comes to sauna and cold thermogenesis and the benefits of heat alteration on the human body, Dr. Rhonda Patrick has an excellent presentation, the Biohacker Summit 2016 recordings. It's now at discount. I'm going to put the link on the screen so you can see where you can reach this if you are following this on Facebook or on Periscope or somewhere else. So biohack.to/Rhonda, and you can access the live stream page where you can also have links to what we've been discussing here, put very well together by a bunch of different people, including Dr. Rhonda Patrick. And I also want to tell you about a book that I've been writing, the Biohacker's Handbook. It's this is the Finnish copy here. It's a pretty big book, over 500 pages, or 1,500 references, hundreds of illustrations, over 4 years of work. And that is now also available as a subscription in the English version. It's not yet available as a hard copy, but it's coming in December 2017. And if you subscribe now, you get all the electronic copies as they come out, and also all the webinars, etc., that we are doing. There is some private exclusive webinars together with Dr. Olli Sovijärvi and nutrition specialist Jaakko Halmetto and me. So we're going to be sharing you some expertise. There's also a private Facebook group where we are more actively answering questions as well. But Biohacker Summit. How was that for you, Rhonda Patrick? So what was your experience in 2016, and would you recommend that for anyone who's interested to go in 2017?
I highly recommend it. Actually, honestly speaking, it was the best conference I've ever attended. So, and that's, I've attended quite a few conferences. Wow. I mean, just hands down, the speakers were great. The expo was great. The dinner beforehand was fantastic, and the offsite event was just phenomenal. I really enjoyed all the people. I really enjoyed just the entire package. So I'm and that's the honest truth. I highly recommend people attend the Biohacker conferences.
That's quite an endorsement right there. We also have a spa outside where you can try infrared sauna and traditional Finnish wood heated sauna and all these things. Let's see in autumn in Helsinki, Finland, what we're going to come up with. But definitely we are always improving every year when it comes to that event. And you're as well, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, most welcome to any of our future Biohacker Summit events. And if you want to speak at any of those, just send me an email. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who want to hear what you're working on as we speak. But I know that you're going to give birth, so that's going to take a lot of your attention for, let's say, next at least 1.5 years, at least judging my co-author Olli Sovijärvi, who already has a child. I mean, they're growing so fast, and must be such such an intriguing thing to kind of jump into as a nutrition researcher. Kind of like, how do I kind of design the diet for this baby so that they can grow the most amazing nervous system to do the most amazing things in the world? Are you already looking forward to that?
Yes, I've already been trying to design my program like now in utero while, my boy is developing, so it's certainly on my mind and will continue to be on my mind, and I'll probably be talking about it quite a bit.
Yeah. Is there, by the way, anything you want to share with women who are pregnant or planning to become one in terms of diet? Like, what should they eat more, for example?
Well, personally, from the research that I've done, broad spectrum, plants are very important. Lots of micronutrients in the greens. Folate's extremely important for development. Also, foods that are high in omega-3 fatty acids. Particularly in this case, I'm actually eating salmon roe, and the reason for that is because the omega-3 fatty acids are in phospholipid form, and there's been about 5 studies now that have looked at the developing brain and how it takes up omega-3 fatty acids. It actually takes it up 10 times better in phospholipid form, and roe is one of the best sources of omega-3 in phospholipid form. However, I avoid raw fish and because of possible parasites, so no sushi. The salmon roe that I get is frozen, and if you freeze the roe at like minus 17 degrees Celsius, it kills all potential parasites that are there. So mine's frozen, and then I thaw it, and then I eat it mostly on top of avocados. And then in addition to that, I'm also eating a lot more foods that are high in iron than I normally do, which happens to be, some sort of grass-fed, or meat, or some wild meat, wild game. But because iron is extremely important for brain development and for myelination, and not getting enough iron has been shown to cause, cognitive problems during pregnancy, has been shown to cause cognitive problems. Obviously, prenatal vitamins have iron in them, but you need more than what's in the prenatal vitamins. So getting it from your diet is very important. Not to mention that the mother's blood cells, your blood volume increases, and so it's just you need even more iron for that as well. So it's kind of like extremely important.
Wow.
So those are some of the things. I don't drink any coffee at all, no caffeine, even though doctors recommend that you can have up to 300 milligrams a day, which would be like the equivalent of like a Starbucks grande coffee. The reason I choose not to is multifold. One is because it's been shown caffeine has been linked to miscarriages, and also it has been linked to increased risk of cleft palate. But in addition to that, just knowing and understanding the mechanism by how caffeine works, like we know it blocks adenosine from interacting with the adenosine receptors. Adenosine makes you sleepy, and so it kind of has this immediate effect of making you feel alert and awake. I just don't know what effect. I mean, if you're blocking adenosine receptors, caffeine crosses the placenta, gets into the developing brain, and if it does something similar, does that have any effect on any sort of brain development? I don't think we have any idea at all. And maybe one of those things you can't quite put your finger on. Does it cause a little more anxiety? I don't know. So because I'm uncertain about it, I've cut it out. And I miss it.
I see. That's a bunch of really good advice on nutrition for just about anyone, and also on top of that for mothers who are waiting. I wish you good luck.
One more thing.
Please do.
I really think that something that's very important for mothers is really trying to get exercise, because exercise stimulates neurogenesis, which obviously is going on in your developing baby's brain. And so I can't run anymore like I used to. So I walk over 3 miles every single day. So I'm walking over 21 miles a week, which, is probably something that we humans used to do back when we had more of an agrarian type of lifestyle. So I really think it's important to get exercise as well.
Absolutely.
As much as you can.
Absolutely. I was 3 weeks in Southeast Asia. I was carrying a huge backpack full of cameras and going to these national parks and hiking and jumping around rocks. And when I came back, my oxygen utilization was off the roof. I was able to easily surpass my typical maximums in different exercise. And it was I didn't really exercise that much. I was just walking around kind of like heavily every day, at least 20,000-30,000 steps. So I can definitely recommend that for anyone. And the mood improvements were just phenomenal. Yeah.
Awesome.
So I know that you have to go, and I wish you good luck, and also greetings to Daniel. He must be a really happy dad soon as well, and you both as parents. I wish you all good luck, and check it out. What's going on the Found My Fitness channel. Maybe we'll hear from you more about these nutritional interventions. And I definitely look forward to the moment when the child really comes to this world, and what kind of hacks you are getting into at that time. So thank you so much, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Teemu. Enjoyed it.
Cool. So I'll let you go. And while we finish, I'm going to say a few words to our audience still here. So if you...
Okay.
If you liked this live webinar, we will do more of them. So send us feedback. We have the chat room open, and we would love to do more of this. Actually, Ben Greenfield has already agreed to do one in May. So there's going to be an invitation coming along with that. I kind of like the live aspect of this, coming from the world of doing podcasts in a recorded fashion. So I think this is amazing, and I like the kind of live feel and people over there listening to us. So if you like what we're doing, let us know. And if there is anything you want to share about this particular event, use the hashtag BH Summit. So that's the hashtag for the conference, and also for these episodes that we are doing. And Dr. Rhonda Patrick was at the Biohacker Summit. There's a recording of her talk, and also we have upcoming Biohacker Summit events coming along. So biohack.to/Rhonda. They're at discount now, and the tickets for upcoming events are in early bird. So you definitely want to grab those, because in Stockholm we already are over half of the tickets are sold. So you definitely don't want to miss that one. And I have actually 3 names to announce, people who already used our hashtag, and those people can choose either to get one of the recordings that we have done for previous Biohacker Summit events for free, or a subscription to the Biohacker's Handbook. And the names are Natasha Viskombe, Aki Linden, and Markus Norrena. So Natasha Viskombe, Aki Linden, and Markus Norrena. If you heard your name, you should definitely send your details through our contact form, and I will hook you up with these freebies. And for the rest of you, I really thank for your presence and listening, and have a beautiful day or night, whatever it is. It's about 10 p.m. here in Helsinki, Finland, and I'm going to roll a little reel once again.
I look at biohacking in this event as a critical step in self-mastery.
Kind of everybody's a biohacker if you try to do something to optimize your body, and to a certain extent, who doesn't?
You become mentally and physically overwhelmingly powerful.
Sleep is key for brain function.
So you test yourself, and then you test yourself again, and then you test yourself again, and see what works for you.
How can I use this to enhance myself, to upgrade myself?
I'm hacking people's biology because I'm hacking people's brains. That can overall enhance your quality of life, which is the goal, of course.
We need to know what we're putting in our body.
How our diet and lifestyle can change our genes.
Have a fantastic day here at the Biohacking Summit.
One, two, three.
4.4 degrees Celsius for 20 seconds, and you can increase norepinephrine in your brain by like 300%.
I wouldn't miss it for the world. It's perfectly organized, really well done.
And you just know when you're here that it's a good place to be.